Starts at what time?
Good evening. Can everyone hear me all right? Okay. Welcome to our high school safety town hall. My name is Mallory Bombright. I'm the community relations director for the district, and I'll be serving sort of as the moderator for this evening. We have a little less than an hour to answer all of your questions. We received 48 questions from families and students. Many of the questions were repeated, so we're going to do our very best to answer all of them tonight for you. We know you're very passionate about this topic, and that each and every one of you who have joined us today really, truly care deeply about your children and their safety, and we want you to know that we do too. We don't take this lightly. The district team, the high school team, the Board of Education, we spent a lot of time addressing these topics, looking in how we can do a better job. And we just want you to know that we all are in this together, and we really, truly do care. Few housekeeping items before we get started. First off, this meeting is being recorded. We are going to share it on the district's YouTube channel after tonight. Mr. Taylor Porter and Mr. Chad Lewis will be answering your questions as candidly as possible. Mr. Ballant, our board president, is also available tonight. We are committed to being open, honest, and transparent with you, and even a little vulnerable during our time together. So we're not going to solve all the world's problems today, but we felt it was important to begin this conversation, have this dialogue. And we as educators believe that we need to partner with our families on important issues like safety. So we're all in this together again. We'll ask for some participation with some constructive feedback towards the end of our session. And if you have any additional comments or questions, we ask that you do so respectfully in the chat. There's time at the end. We'll try to respond to any of those questions as well. We want to keep this meeting relevant to all. We also have a hard end due to the school board meeting that starts immediately following this. So if you have questions that are very specific to your child or family, please make sure you direct those to Mr. Porter and the high school administrative team so that they can begin to address those after the session. So let's get started. First off, Mr. Lewis, there were quite a few questions about whether or not we are seeing an increase in behavioral issues. Things like fighting, drugs, sex crimes. Can you talk a little bit about what we're experiencing here at Sycamore? Are we seeing an increase?
Yeah, I appreciate the question from our community. And certainly it is not lost on us that, we have had some recent issues, behavioral issues that were not, I would say, typical or common of our school environment. But what I would say is from when you start to qualify things as an increase, you have to look back at years of data and really determine, was that a difference in what you've seen year to year? What I would tell you is some of the incidents that we've seen recently are a little more intense than we're used to. And certainly it's our job as educators to care about all of our students and digging in and finding out what were some of those issues. But we do a lot of work with our students. We try to engage with our students prior to incidents occurring. We want to help them. We want to support them. We want to engage with them. We want to problem solve with them. We work diligently to help them make good decisions. But when you're working with 1,700 teenagers, sometimes they make bad decisions. And our job is to make sure we support them in learning from those poor decisions and recover from those decisions. So yes, we've seen an increase in some of the behaviors and some of the intensity of those behaviors, but from a scope standpoint, is it irregular to have some physical incidents in the high school setting? It is not, based on what we've seen in the past.
Mr. Porter, could you talk a little bit about what steps are taken anytime a serious accusation is brought to the administration, whether it's threats of violence, sexual assault, bullying, drug use?
Yes, I can. And good afternoon. Thank you, Mallory. And I appreciate Mr. Lewis and Mr. Ballant for being here as well. I'm also happy to share as specific as I can regarding our most recent incident that I received numerous phone calls or emails regarding. But I think just to be more broad, how we respond to any type of kind of conflict or school disciplinary infraction, it's critically important that myself and my entire team follows due process. So along with due process comes respecting privacy. There's certain rules and laws in place that respect that force us to respect privacy. And that's FERPA. We can maybe talk about that a bit later. But ultimately, every matter is taken very seriously. There's not a single incident like you listed, whether it's fights or sexual misconduct or bullying, that we don't investigate in the exact fashion that we're trained to do. And so that could include interviews with individual students. It could include interviews with groups of students. It will always include parent communication, parent contact, really just making sure we're kind of working together and just sharing what we know as along the journey of doing the investigation. A lot of times it includes watching cameras and really trying to get like a holistic view of whatever incident we're trying to get to the bottom of. And so we work together as a team. There's times where we pull in our district partners. There's times where we pull in our SRO, Officer Paul Payne. And so it depends on what the exact infraction is. But regardless of whatever it may be, we always follow a due process.
So additionally, we have a threat assessment process, which I'm not sure a lot of people know about, that we have to follow. Mr. Lewis, could you talk a little bit about that, what that looks like?
Sure. Yeah, we take great pride in our threat assessment process. It is an internal process that we use when we receive a concern. And let's say we have an anonymous tip line. Let's use that for as an example. If we get an anonymous tip about a concern, depending on what it might be, if it rises to a specific level, we might activate our threat assessment team. And it's an internal team of staff members, teachers, could be school psychs, could be counselors, could be prior teachers, could be administrators, certainly first responders from our various communities. And we come together to discuss, okay, what do we have? What do we believe might be a potential threat? And we start digging in through multiple channels about, what other pieces of information do we need that might be relevant to help us form, as Mr. Porter talked about, a holistic view of the issue. And that might be checking with the police about any criminal background. Are there potential threats, social media scans, looking at students' Chromebooks and technology information. All of that helps us form a holistic view of a student or a threat, depending on if it's not related to a student. And we take all that information and we make a decision as a threat assessment team. And that team is really charged with trying to determine what kind of threat are we dealing with. If it's a lower level threat, there are steps that we take, interventions that we take, certain supports that we might put in place. And then we might formulate a safety plan. Certainly the higher level threats might lead to disciplinary action. That disciplinary action could be anywhere from low level discipline like a detention, a Saturday school, all the way to suspension from school, which is more severe, up to including 10 days of suspension and a recommendation for expulsion from school. So when we would get to that level, a safety plan is definitely put into place and monitored by the school personnel to work directly with families and students, and sometimes potential outside agencies to look at how we can best support a student and make sure that their return to school is successful.
So some families have raised concerns about a lack of consequences or a perceived lack of consequences, that not enough is being done or discipline isn't being handled properly. So Mr. Porter, I'm going to just direct this to you first. Can you first kind of talk about what those consequences are for things like fighting? And then secondly, explain to families why they aren't always notified about behavior incidents and the eventual disciplinary actions that are taken.
Thank you. Similar to what you just heard from Mr. Lewis, there's not a single time where we have a fight or a severe physical altercation where a student would not end up with a suspension. If you reflect on the incident from just a few weeks ago, we started that fight with really safety in the immediate moment of, are these students okay? When that happened, we started by making sure our nurse was right there. We wanted to make sure our kids are okay. We're still dealing with teenagers and students that we know make mistakes, and we have to be there to do the best we can to help them recover from those mistakes. Once we establish that we don't have any kind of imminent health concern, then we can go to what I said earlier, which is due process, which if there is a physical fight would lead to a suspension. there are ranges. It could be 5 days, it could be up to 10 days. And there are times where it could lead to a recommendation for expulsion. And we try to go through that investigation to figure out where on that scale or spectrum a potential fight could land a student.
And I think it's important to point out, as Mr. Porter said, not only do we deal with the school consequences, we consult with our local law enforcement, and most of the time it's our SROs that are in our building to look at legal consequences as well. Significant disruption to our school environment will not be tolerated. Whether it's disciplinary consequences or legal action, it is not something that we desire for our students, but we certainly are not scared to act and react to these situations. We like to be proactive and engage with the students and try to help them problem solve in a different way. But again, some of our students make bad choices, and they have, I think probably one of the most impactful things that was ever said to me at an expulsion table prior to when I used to do expulsion hearings is when you ask students, why do they fight at school? The number one answer you get from students is that they feel safer to fight at school. That's why they fight here. And I think that's something important for our community to realize, because we will break it up. There's no guarantee that a fight breaks out at a local park that it's going to get broken up. And that's scary. And that's the version that I try to tell our students when we sit at that expulsion table is things can go badly quick for you. The consequences can go from simple school discipline to, if you harm somebody, you hit them and they fall down and hit their head, you can really significantly injure somebody. And you may have not intended to do that, but that's what can happen in a fight is somebody trips over their own feet and hits their head, and it might be more severe than just school consequences. So I think it's important for our community to understand the reason they fight here is because they feel most comfortable here. Now, we had to move to a zero tolerance because we were, honestly, our educational environment, our students deserve better than having to dodge fights in their hallway. So that's why for the remainder of this year, that's why we hit zero tolerance. 10 days suspension and recommendation for expulsion is not our normal discipline for fights. But if we have multiple fights, or if a student has multiple fights, we might head down that path with a student that you cannot continue to fight in our schools, and we're not going to tolerate that disruption.
So the second part of that question, then, if you could, you sort of hit on that earlier when you referenced FERPA. Why is it that sometimes families might not hear what the disciplinary action was taken? Or I guess there's sort of a need and a want for some sort of transparency on some of these cases. So talk a little bit about why that can't.
So I have two answers. One of the answers is there's probably room for improvement. And it could be as simple as me continuing to learn kind of the Sycamore community and the Sycamore way. When is the right time to communicate? When is over communication happening? Do you want to know who was late to class today as a community? So I've got to continue to just get better and figure out what's the right sweet spot on communicating daily activities at our high school, because in some of our experience, these things aren't new because we live it and breathe it every day. And so to just continue to get better and ensure that no one's numb to a school fight. This is a serious matter, but there may be room for improvement on how we communicate what's going on and what levels our community wants to know about. So we'll just keep working on that together. The other answer is pretty tight. It's about FERPA and privacy. And this doesn't have to be something that's a fight. This is anything that's student related and minor related. We can talk about academic privacy, student discipline record privacy. If you're a parent and there's something that directly involves your student, then we would give you all the information only pertaining to your student. Even the other students in that conflict or in that classroom or in that altercation, there's chances that it could be your neighbor, and because you do activities together in the community, and that's something we can't really control. But it would be inappropriate for any administrator or staff member to have some type of situation in the schoolhouse and give anyone information about any student outside of their own son or daughter. And so it is hard sometimes to be fully transparent because we can't give you all the details because we do respect the law. And what I try to assure all families in our community is that we take these matters seriously. And personally, I wouldn't be here if I didn't believe in accountability. And so I want everyone to know that, especially when we're talking about the most recent fight, every single person involved was held accountable. And that may be as deep as I can go as far as letting you know all the ins and outs.
I appreciate that. And if you could just talk a little bit about, since this, really the meeting that we have here today was related to last Monday's incident. Can you just kind of talk specifically about what happened and what was done?
Yes. So, and even before the incident from 2 weeks ago on that Monday, I think really what allowed us to say we need to do this kind of town hall setting is because you can look at maybe the last 2 months or so, and there have been several physical altercations that none of us are proud of, especially me as the school principal and the leader of the school. These things have actually been surprising to me because we share expectations here. We all expect the most and the best out of all of our students. And so that doesn't mean that kids aren't kids and things don't happen, but it's a matter of we all have expectations. And just like our parents that have responded to me over the phone and through email, I just want to assure you all we do have the highest expectations. And so we will continue to hold everyone accountable. Over the past 2 months, there's been several things that have taken place in our eating spaces, right? Typically, it's the commons or the cafeteria. And so as a response to that, we made an operational decision that said, we need more adults in that space. And so that played a role in the fight from 2 weeks ago, because on that very day, this incident happened where I had reallocated personnel. And so on the day of the incident, I can assure you I had 15 adults, which is far more than we typically would in the eating space or the commons or the cafeteria. But the students somehow decided to leave their assigned place. And because of a strategic decision, it kind of put us in a predicament to where we aren't in a position to hold hands with high school students. We're not. We do have some reasonable expectations that when we give you a schedule, when we say go to this room or that space, we do expect our students to respond accordingly. And 99.7% of the times they do. So it's okay in that front. But that incident happened while multiple staff members were supervising the lunch session in the commons. And then I was myself, along with our counseling staff in our theater or auditorium, doing a program for PBIS and really laying kind of a foundation or relaying a foundation for school-wide expectations. And so in the midst of reallocating personnel to a hotspot and taking myself and counselors to do a cohort-wide or class meeting for ninth graders, we can't be everywhere all the time. And so this incident took place kind of on the heels of those two opportunities.
So, we back to what you were sharing earlier about not being able to share specifics about different individuals. We can't do that, but we can clear up some misinformation, right? That has been brought to our attention. Things that occurred with that incident 2 weeks ago on Monday, we had a couple questions submitted about a student who allegedly sexually assaulted 13 students. That's false. So can you talk about some of the other false rumors that have been kind of being spread around our community?
Yes, and we had I think a similar opportunity last Friday. We have an incredible PTO at the high school. So if anyone's on the call and you're not a member of PTO, that's a good opportunity for you and I to build relationship and have monthly touch points. So last Friday, we had a meeting with our parent community that's a part of PTO. And we were also able to clear up some, I guess I'll just say, rumors regarding that incident. For example, we did call EMTs because we wanted to just move from a place of just extreme caution to make sure everyone's physically okay. No student was put on a stretcher at any point. No student was carried out of our building on a stretcher. To my knowledge, no one's heart stopped. And to my knowledge, no one involved was pregnant. And so there's several other rumors, but I wanted to address those four because through that discussion with our parent community last Friday, there's some things that, and sometimes these things get sensationalized and it's not normal to experience fights in our building. And so when one happens, there is a tendency to talk about it and it becomes this day or two or three of just a topic. And that's where we were. And it was a distraction. And so as you continue to discuss this and information goes from one telephone to another telephone, I think some of the information was clouded, but I want to assure you, no one was taken out of our building on a stretcher. No one's heart stopped to my knowledge, and nobody involved was pregnant, if that helps answer your question.
And Mr. Porter, correct me if I'm wrong, but all the students were released to their parents
Yes.
and were able to walk out of the building on their own.
Correct.
Okay.
Every student was, like you said, parents were involved as the due process investigation went along. Every student left in the care of their own parents.
So there are several questions related to discipline for students who record fights, because we shared that information that that was a possibility going forward. Specifically, why would a student be punished for recording video of a fight when it could potentially be used as evidence?
Yeah, so this also was a good just conversation that I was able to have with some of our parents last Friday. And I think it's probably got multiple answers, but just understanding that we're in 2023 and just about every student, I think every one of us have a cell phone probably in our pocket right now. And there are times where you feel like it can protect you or it can help solve a problem for you to whip out your cell phone and start to record. I just would share with all of our parents, I coach our students not to do that while at school. I don't think there's a single pocket of our building that's not covered by a camera. We have cameras everywhere and in places you might not even realize. And so I think the slippery slope, if I'm a student and I decide to pull out a cell phone and record, is you don't know how that could lead to yourself being in hot water. And so if you're going to record a fight, like 2 weeks ago, for example, of other minors in an altercation, and all of a sudden someone, let's just say hypothetically, someone's shirt is ripped off, or there's other ramifications that you engage in by filming it, and you don't know what gets turned over to police, what type of investigations leave the schoolhouse and become legal through the court system investigations. And you can put yourself in a position you really don't want to be in, when in reality, we have cameras right above your head and we're going to catch it. And so the coaching from me and my team to all of our students is simple. If you see something, say something. The best thing our students can do to keep our hallways safe is to find a trusted adult, report to a staff member, report to an SRO, report to a principal, and really just do their best to get out of harm's way themselves. If you are, even going back to 2 weeks ago, there was a cell phone recording that took place. And anytime that happens, you can even be caught in the scuffle and you can be hurt as you're standing there filming. You don't know how these things escalate. And so it's personally dangerous. Legally, you can put yourself in an investigation that you really don't want to be in or need to be in. And so I just really want to reiterate, the best coaching point is if you see something that isn't right, go find a trusted adult.
And I just want to point out something that you said, because you you made a point about our security cameras. Our security cameras are only in locations that they are legally allowed to be in. So I don't want people walking away from this town hall thinking that we have cameras, hidden cameras, and, you know, areas that they're private areas where they're not supposed to be. So
Correct. Yeah, we did have a question about that.
just want to
across the
make
chat.
sure that that's very clear going forward.
Yeah, appreciate that. And the, you know, when a student records a video, it's a portion of what we can see. With Monday's incident, we saw a lot more once we pulled the interactions that were occurring prior to the event.
I think the other thing that parents have to realize and community members have to realize that sometimes people that are recording almost act as instigators of the fight. We live in a social media world where everyone wants to, and I mean, I didn't realize how many things that are out there on social media from a standpoint of just like, you know, there's a Twitter channel called Brutal Fights. Like, people are trying to record these things to get to put it on social media. And I think we're not asking we're supportive of our students that are trying to be helpful to us and trying to alert us to issues. I think where it crosses that line, and that's why we have to take a stance on it, is there are students that are trying to record it to put it on their YouTube channel or TikTok or whatever the case may be, that maybe not being helpful to us. So we don't have time in the heat of a situation to make that judgment call. That's why it's helpful for people not to do those things and, just go get an adult and get someone to help out. That's the most helpful thing that a student can do to assist in those highly dynamic, very difficult situations that staff members are dealing with.
So, based on some of the questions that we received, we sort of have two camps, right? There's a group of families who feel like students involved in fighting should be kicked out of school, taken out in handcuffs, never brought back. And then we have the other side who really want to know what's being proactively done to help students and what restorative practices are in place. So I think, for one, there seems to be a little bit of a misconception about what an expulsion means. Mr. Lewis, could you explain a little bit about why students who have been expelled end up back in school?
So let's talk about when you say have been expelled. So when a student is recommended for expulsion, it means they have hit that point where their behavior is so severe that we need to make a consideration of whether or not they're allowed to access their education. An expulsion, depending on what it's for, but I will say the typical expulsion is 80 days. That's the max that we can put them out of school. Our school year is over 170 days. So even if there were an incident and a student was expelled from school, they would be back in some point in that school year. It's also our attorneys have also given us guidance, unless it's something significantly severe that you want to carry over into the next year, that their recommendation is not to carry it over year to year. But I want to go back to, before we even talk about expulsion, Ms. Monbright, I want to talk about the fact that all students are important at Sycamore Community Schools. All means all. It is our obligation as educators to educate all of our students, whether they get into a fight or they create a situation that is unsafe. It is our responsibility. They are residents, they are taxpayers, they are community members. It is our responsibility to work with them and make sure that they get the education they deserve. It may not always look the same for every student. It may look different. As we work through an expulsion process, they may get sent to an alternative location, but when they are recommended for expulsion, it means we are considering removing their access to education for 80 days. If they are not on an individualized education plan through our special education program, that means they get zero education for 80 days. Plus, they've already been out of school for their suspension. That does not lead to success for any of our students. So we take that decision very seriously to take away someone's education. And I always say, I have never taken away or have never expelled a student. They get themselves expelled because we usually give them multiple opportunities to not be expelled from school. So what does that look like? If they are recommended for expulsion, we tend to call it an abeyance if we decide not to expel them. So they're out for their 10 days and we allow them to return to school, but there are always conditions with that return. There might be a safety plan in place. There might be a recommendation for, if it's for drugs, they have to go to an accredited drug treatment program and get a letter talking about the treatment recommendations that they're in. If it's for a physical altercation, it might be that they have to do anger management. If it's for something significantly like a threat or something of that nature, it might be that they have to go to a accredited psychiatric or psychologist to or a mental health therapist to get a clearance letter saying that they are safe and ready to return to school. Until we get those things in place, we do not allow a student to come back to school. But if we feel comfortable with the steps that we've taken, they might come back within that 10-day period. So just because a student, or they might hear that a student is recommended for expulsion, doesn't immediately mean that they're expelled for 80 days. So I hope that clears it up a little bit. Certainly, if we expel someone for 80 days, that means they're missing a whole semester of education here at Sycamore, and that's detrimental to their future.
And Mr. Lewis, I would just add that that is not Sycamore policy. That is state law, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
So, and you mentioned, I love what you had to say, Mr. Lewis, but we also have a responsibility to make sure all students feel safe as well. And you spoke about safety plan, but Can you talk a little bit about when there's a situation with students, what that safety plan looks like, not only for, say, an individual who's been disciplined, but for the other students involved?
Absolutely. We absolutely have safety plans for what I would consider victims in a situation. If they have been, let's say the target of bullying or violence or misconduct that has been directed at them, there would be a safety plan in place. There'd be supports, there'd be interventions, there would be things that we do to make sure that they feel safe, comfortable at school, check-ins with their school counselor. It could be simple things as just checking in with them and making sure that they have a support system in place that they feel comfortable. Could be seeing one of our school-based mental health therapists, whatever the case may be, and whatever support we need to put into place also for the victim. Because you're right, we have an obligation to make sure that not only our students, but our staff feel safe in their working environment. And so you can see the delicate balance that we have to maintain. It's not only supporting all of our students that are involved in these situations, but making sure that our staff feel supported. So there's a delicate balancing act between being harsh on discipline and making sure we take appropriate action versus trying to preserve the educational environment for students that deserve an educational environment free of disruption, but also trying to support students that are having some struggles, having some academic struggles, and likely some behavioral struggles that are paired with that.
So, Mr. Porter, if you could address for our families and students who feel like all students are being punished for the actions of a few. That's sort of the sentiment that was, brought forward in some of the questions.
Thank you for that. I think this might be specific to what we call aviator bell. And again, multiple angles on this, but in the short term, I can empathize with students that maybe say we're all being punished. Not that we're punishing all students, but what we're trying to do is get a short-term solution while we build a better long-term solution. So in the short term, and in fact, we actually opened the school year up in this fashion. Part of it's because I'm new and I'm trying to continue to learn the dynamic landscape of our incredible high school. But if you are familiar with our schedule and how we do business, we have 2 lunch sessions. We have roughly 1,700 kids, and so everyone gets lunch. So in theory, you'll have a lunch A with 850 students. You'll have a lunch B with 850 students. And we all know when you have 800 well, maybe we don't all know, but I know. If you are in a space with 850 teenagers, things could get very interesting, okay? And so with that being said, during lunch, we assign extra adult support, extra teachers, maybe educational aides to be in that cafeteria or common space, just to be in proximity and arm's reach and to proactively deter any type of inappropriate behavior, okay? And so if we are going to reallocate personnel to be in the commons, that means we have maybe lost an opportunity to supervise the hallways. And that is really the direct reason why we have put in place no hall passes during aviator bell. So if 850 students are at lunch, that means the other half of the school is at aviator bell. And aviator bell is really incredible. We will keep that into our schedule as we go forward. But in the short term, I've requested to simply have no movement during aviator bell. And I think that's something we're going to revisit immediately after spring break. But in the short term, just the past couple of days, while we reestablished a safe environment, I thought it was most appropriate to slow down the movement and allow us to have more conversations, pull in ideas from counselors, pull in ideas from district office. And I think students and parents should expect communication on that as we come out of spring break. Aviator Bell is incredible for self-care. It's incredible for academic supports, good opportunity to do some just individual studying. There's a lot of ways students leverage Aviator Bell. But again, it was about the short term, doing what we thought was best as we work on a probably better solution long term.
Graduation, prom, those things like that.
So thank you. So this is an opportunity to deal with more rumors. We would never cancel a graduation or a prom. That's not been a communication from myself or anyone on our admin team. And so I don't, know how those types of narratives are always generated. But we deal with the students that are directly involved and anyone that may be helped incite an incident. And then as far as the school-wide restriction of movements, that's as far as it went from a school-wide or programmatic or celebration level event. So it really was just slowing down movement during Aviator Bell. Graduation, in fact, is May 21st at 3:00 p.m. I'm pretty excited for that, as well as the entire class of 2023. And then prom is coming up really soon. Tickets go on sale March 28th, which is Tuesday, when we return from spring break. So looking forward to that as well.
Nice plug. Mr. Porter, can you also talk about what resources are available to support students and what early interventions might be in place to try to resolve conflict before it would escalate?
Sure. And this also might be another one of those spaces where we might have opportunity to get better. We have the best counselors that I've ever seen. We have ourselves organized to where we have school counselors that work with grade bands. So there's 2 for 9th grade, 2 for 10th grade, 2 for 11th, and then 2 for 12th grade, obviously. We in fact have 2.5 or 2 full-time and then 1 part-time therapists or clinicians that are assigned to our high school from Cincinnati Children's Hospital to really offer more therapeutic services one-on-one or therapeutic services in group settings. And then it's really just a part of our daily way of business at the high school is to focus on relationships, because even if you can't get to a counselor right away, if you can't get scheduled for some of those therapeutic services, everything we do and everything that we know is always going to come back to building healthy relationships to support students. And so I wonder, if there's ideas and things that we're considering for next year. I'm open to any suggestions. But as a principal, administrative team, and teacher, it's about building healthy relationships. And then I think we do have like robust counseling and appropriate therapeutic partners as well.
So Mr. Lewis, just to kind of tag on to that, looking at the district as a whole, K-12, sort of what's being done to support students' social development prior to them reaching high school. But talk a little bit about what's going on.
One of the important steps that I think we saw coming out of the pandemic years is the need for additional counseling services at the elementary level. So, myself and the board discussed that last year with our administrative team, and we made the decision that that was an important budgetary item, and we added full-time counselors at elementaries, where we used to only have part-time counselors. And I will say, just talking with our elementary admin, they can tell you the amazing impact that those individuals have had on the environment of those schools and how much it has calmed down the environments, but also allowed them to engage and intervene. And we talk about it all the time. Early intervention is the cornerstone of how we can assist these students in being successful long-term. It is so critically important. So having those experts at that level and being able to spend time with our students and engage with our students. So I think that's one aspect. The other one is we have a district social worker. She is amazing. Mrs. Crowley is everywhere, but it is something that I'm looking at that I think needs to be reviewed. Is one enough for our district and the issues that we're seeing, and would an additional FTE in that area be appropriate? So again, we have to balance everything that we do against our budget and look at the big picture. And so those decisions get made at an administrative level after we review all of these critical pieces. But it is not lost on me the supports that our students needs, and certainly the partnership with Mindpeace and our mental health professionals from Children's Hospital has been great. That's something that we did not have a handful of years ago. So we're not stopping just because we've done some nice things. Doesn't mean we're going to stop looking at other resources and other supports that we can bring in for our students.
So at this point, I'm not seeing any additional questions that have come into the chat.
Mrs. Bombright, while you're looking for
Sure.
questions, if you don't mind, I would like to, just because it came up yesterday, obviously, we had a new, I guess, a new thing that none of us would have expected to happen yesterday, which was, the the fire at the high school. And I want to assure our community that, I don't want to say we practice for fires, but we practice for significant incidents that happen within our schools, and we are prepared to assist our students in not only quick, rapid evacuation, but reunification and also dealing with the circumstances that were dealt with. And so I will just say a big thank you to our first responders from Montgomery, Sims Township, Blue Ash, Sharonville, Sycamore Township. They were all there, all hugely helpful in making sure that the fire was out quickly and that no one was at risk because it was a scary situation. The building was, I would say, in comparison to normal, relatively empty comparative to a normal day, but it doesn't make you feel any better when you are in the building and you find out that there's a fire in the building. The alarms went off that were appropriate and appropriately went off at the right time, and people evacuated. And again, thank you to the first responders, but also a huge thank you to the staff for their patience and helping collect students that were in the building, getting them to a safe location. But I do want to reassure our community that the natatorium and that project, they've already essentially separated the natatorium from the full building. And although we had smoke damage and a little bit of water, I'm happy to report that, the building is in good shape. I do believe that we will be back in school right after spring break with no issues. We really just took out of an abundance of caution to close for today and tomorrow because the smoke smell is in the building. We need to get our cleaning crew from ServPro into the building. And, we didn't want our students to be in an environment where it might be questionable that, is it safe to be there? So we had some fire suppression situations that worked for the incident, but now needed to be repaired and ready to go for when we return from break. So again, out of abundance of caution, we thought it was important to close school. And I know communications come out from Mr. Porter about, making sure when we come back from break that the third quarter is, essentially just extended to be able to get some of those last minute tests, quizzes, projects in and, be able to end the third quarter on a positive note. And again, just a huge thank you to all the people that support us. Really a big thank you to our community and our parents that, did a great job getting there and getting back into the environment and picking up students in a timely manner.
So just looking through the chat, because I want to give people some opportunities that had additional questions afterwards. And to your point about the last 2 months of school, one question that came in about the class of 2003. They have not had a normal year at all in high school, right? It's been COVID, it's been this, it's been that, construction. How might we empower them to be leaders in the last 2 months of school?
Okay, so we definitely recognize there have been some unusual and unpredictable circumstances for our current seniors, class of 2023. And it's just something that we will continue to work on together. Again, if there are ideas or recommendations or suggestions, we're open to that. Some of it is about continuing academic supports. The far majority of our seniors are ready to graduate and go crush it in life after high school. But we still have 2.5 months of teaching and learning that we're doing our job diligently to take care of our students. There's other opportunities, and those have been communicated for the past 2 Fridays in our newsletter to our high school community. It's just the end of year events, and several of those events are very specific to celebrating our seniors. The next opportunity, and I hope all of our seniors have signed up by now, we're going to take our seniors to the main event Thursday night. It's a late night activity. Myself, several teachers, several awesome parents have volunteered to help chaperone that event. Our seniors will engage in a laser tag, students versus staff. So we're looking forward to that. And then after spring break, you're going to continue to see other celebrations to help celebrate them for the hard work they've done and just acknowledge it's been a bit of an unusual ride, and we'll just keep working on it together.
So we've got a few more minutes just to answer a couple more questions, and I know we got to wrap this up. How are staff trained to appropriately respond in the event of an altercation or some sort of incident with kids?
Okay, so there are actually levels to how staff should respond. Again, we're all human beings and we all have to start with, you take care of yourself. It's no different than the coaching you get on an airplane. You got to put your mask on before you take care of the next person. And so we do a training called CPI, which I believe is Crisis Prevention Institute. And quite frankly, the far majority of the ways to prevent physical altercations is really about de-escalating conversations, using body positioning, and then there are actual ways to physically restrain and separate students if they're engaged. All of our staff go through CPI training, or at least a refresher on CPI training every year. Just due to the nature of the job, there are different staff members that have more hours of that training. And so if teachers are witnessing an incident, there may be some teachers that have more training and more confidence that they could do it effectively. The worst case scenario is someone, in addition to the students engaged, also gets hurt. And so we want to be thoughtful around that as well. And so sometimes it's about crowd control. Sometimes it's about minimizing the engagement, and then really finding an SRO or administrator as quickly as possible to really get in there and separate a environment like you witnessed, or some of us have been able to watch from 2 Mondays ago.
So along that line, we have an SRO, obviously. You talked a little bit earlier about the amount of security cameras we have in place, the increased supervision from staff. I guess this is probably a question more directed for Mr. Lewis, but why not metal detectors?
Well, I mean, I guess I would say the easy answer is if you go on YouTube and just Google how to get past a metal detector, that you'll get about 40 videos that pop up on how to bypass a metal detector, which is really concerning. So I would say that's first and foremost. Second, there is no perfect answer to school safety and security. I agree with Mr. Porter. Relationships and building good, strong relationships with your students, between staff and students, is the best way to ensure and maintain a safe environment. All of these different safety or security pieces that you can buy are bypassable. And it's easy to find videos and information on how to bypass them. So unless you want to build a prison for our students, that's the only way that we could make sure that it's kind of a impenetrable fortress, so to speak. And I don't know about you, but I want our students to have a comfortable environment in which to learn, a safe environment in which to learn. And I don't think that's a prison. So that is not something that we've considered. I will tell you, when we talk with our first responders and safety experts, they do not share with us that they think we should spend money on all of these different things to help increase our security. The number one thing that they tell us to spend our money on is training. Train people and invest in your people. And that's what we spend our time, effort, and money on.
So there's been a couple questions in the chat. I think this is actually a great way to kind of wrap things up. Parents just want to know how they can be involved, how they can support, how they can reach out to you if they've got ideas, since you shared you're open to some ideas. So just kind of talk about how they can get in touch with you.
Sure. So I should also mention that we do have a safety committee at our school. And so we meet monthly. It's a team of teachers and administrators, and we have conversations from A to Z. We take different steps as we kind of respond to what we're living through, to make sure that there's always a team of people at the building level that are highly interested in making sure, not that we turn our school into a prison, but that we're always prepared and being responsive to things as they evolve. Parents, even last Friday, there was a thought that said we should solicit parent volunteers to help with hallway duty. Not yet. Why don't we just continue to have conversations, engage through PTO, but it's a matter of that training piece, right? If we were to invite parents in to help with cafeteria duty or hallway duty, unless that parent's been CPI trained, a situation could escalate, and I don't know if that's what we want. And so I think that we need to continue to engage in more conversation, and please email me or anyone on my administrative team. And I also think that joining PTO and having those scheduled monthly meetings where we can have more dialogue and discussion around what we're currently doing and what are the options that are out there. It likely will come back to relationships and training, and then just acknowledging my own learning curve. We got to get that communication sweet spot figured out as well.
So what I would say, we've talked about, if you hear something, say something. If you see something, say something. If you have any concerns for your own safety or your friend's safety, like that's the biggest thing I think that we feel is as an administrative team, like we're only as good as the information we have. So you've got to bring it to us, right?
Yeah, there's multiple avenues. There are we really, really hope that you have an adult that you trust in our building that you can go directly to. Certainly myself or any administrator in the building. And there are also anonymous safety tip lines that you can access right on our district website. And so there's different ways for you to report. But Ms. Brownbright, you're right. If we don't know about an incident or about an opportunity to prevent an incident, if no one's informed us, it really handicaps us from being able to go out and address it.
And Ms. Bombrad, I will say one step further, which is the parents want to know how to help. That's how you can help is don't jump on social media and start talking about an incident that you're not gotten information from the school district about. As we've talked about, we can't share all the details that are protected by privacy laws about a student incident or particular students. But instead of going on social media and just basically joining in and sharing in the telephone game, because I think what people found is as they started to talk with us after this incident on Monday, a lot of the details that they were getting from people were incorrect. And it started all the hype and the rumors and got people all upset when all they had to do was call the school and they could have gotten the correct information. So what they can do to help us is support us by calling us first. Make us your first phone call, your first email, your first whatever communication method is appropriate, because it certainly helps to have the information directly from the school district. So we will certainly be as open and transparent with information that we can. But if I can't share something with you, I will tell you. I cannot share that with you because it's protected by privacy laws. But we want you to get the correct information. We're not hiding anything. There's nothing to hide here. We're not trying to protect any information. We want our community to feel informed and we want to be a partner. But good partnerships are two-way communication, not one-way communication.
So Mr. Porter mentioned that line, just so everyone knows, that's the Ohio Safer Schools tip line. It's 24/7, completely anonymous. You can call or text. That number is 844-SAFER-OH. So that's out there for folks. I think I hope people feel like we've been transparent and they've gotten answers to their questions. Of course, if you have additional questions, you can send them to either COMM at sycamoreschools.org, and I can make sure that they get to the appropriate person, or contact Mr. Lewis, Mr. Porter, Mr. Ballant with any further questions or comments. I don't think this is the end of our discussion today here. I believe that we're going to plan on doing some more engaging sessions, two-way discussions, because we don't have all the answers and that we are a partnership with our families. So we want to do whatever we can to better support all of our students and make sure that everybody feels safe and welcome and included and just has a great school experience. So with that, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you.
I would just like to say thank you to our community for tuning in. Thank you, parents, for caring so much and engaging with us. And we look forward to future engagement with you. So have a great evening. Feel free to tune into the board meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.